April 27th, 2016, Wednesday in the 5th week of Easter.
A reading from the Acts of the Apostles. Some who had come down from Judea were instructing the brothers, "Unless you are circumcised according to the Mosaic practice, you cannot be saved." Because there arose no little dissension and debate by Paul and Barnabas with them, it was decided that Paul, Barnabas, and some of the others should go up to Jerusalem to the apostles and presbyters about this question. They were sent on their journey by the church and passed through Phoenicia and Samaria, telling of the conversion of the Gentiles, and brought great joy to all the brethren. When they arrived in Jerusalem, they were welcomed by the church, as well as by the apostles and the presbyters, and they reported what God had done with them. But some from the party of the Pharisees who had become believers stood up and said, "It is necessary to circumcise them and direct them to observe the Mosaic law." The apostles and the presbyters met together to see about this matter. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord. I rejoice because they said to me, 'We will go up to the house of the Lord.' And now we have set foot within your gates, O Jerusalem. Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord." Jerusalem built as a city with a compact unity. To it the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord. Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord. According to the decree for Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. In it are set up judgment seats, seats for the house of David. Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus said to his disciples, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He takes away every branch in me that does not bear fruit, and every one that does he prunes so that it will bear more fruit. You are already pruned because of the word that I spoke to you. Remain in me as I remain in you. Just as a branch cannot bear fruit on its own unless it remains on the vine, so neither can you unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever remains in me, and I in him, will bear much fruit, because without me you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me will be thrown out like a branch and wither. People will gather them and throw them into a fire, and they will be burned. If you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask for whatever you want, and it will be done for you. By this is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples." The Gospel of the Lord.
April 27th, Wednesday of the 5th week of Eastertide. The first reading comes from Acts of the Apostles, chapter 15, 1-6. We hear that there is a controversy in the early church. The pagans who have converted are being told by some evangelizers that they should be circumcised. In a sense, that's logical because, remember, when pagans are converting, they're embracing Jesus, the Messiah whom Yahweh had sent to Israel to fulfill all the promises he had made through the prophets, through the psalmists, through the law of Israel. Therefore, they're becoming Jews. If a census form went around and they were asked to identify their religion, they wouldn't at first call themselves Christians, they'd call themselves Jews who believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So if they're Jews, shouldn't they be circumcised? Shouldn't they keep the dietary laws? The converted Pharisees believe they should, and there are a number of members of the Jerusalem community who say this. Paul and Barnabas say no. They have been freed in the blood of Christ, therefore they don't have to follow us. And this will lead up to what is called the Council of Jerusalem, a gathering of the early disciples where they decide on a joint strategy to address to these Gentile Christians. Notice, A very serious controversy involving the very definition of what it means to be a Christian is resolved not by violence, not by anger, but rather by discussion, by prayer, by discernment, which should be a model for all of us. The Gospel is from John 15, 1-8. This is part of the Last Supper discourse, and it's the allegory of Jesus being the vine, we're the branches. If the branches are attached to the vine, they produce fruit, but if they're not attached, they'll dry up, they'll wither, and be thrown into the fire. Likewise, it's with us, that in order to have vitality, in order to have a life that's filled with meaning, Jesus has to be part of it. He has to be the very source of who we are. If Jesus is not an active part of our life, then we're living dead. We might as well be zombies, because there's nothing in us that speaks of the fullness of life that Jesus offers. What does it mean that Jesus is part of our life? Certainly it's a question of prayer, but it's also a question of acting as He acted. It's a question of loving as He loved. It's a question of receiving His forgiveness and then offering that forgiveness to others. It's a question of studying, knowing what Jesus taught, and then even more of living, acting like He did, to the poor, to those who are broken, to those who most need our love. And may God bless us.